On the afternoon of November 24, 1971, a nondescript man called himself Dane Cooper approached the counter of Northwest Orient Airlines in Portland, Oregon. He used cash to buy a one-way ticket on Flight 305 bounded for Seattle, Washington. Then one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in FBI history began. Cooper was a quiet man who appeared to be in his mid-40s, wearing a business suit with a black tie and white shirt. He boarded the aircraft, a Boeing 727, took seat 18C and ordered a drink, bourbon and soda. Flight 305, approximately one-third full, departed Portland on schedule at 2:50 p.m. Shortly after takeoff, Cooper handed a note to the flight attendant located nearest to him in a jump seat attached to the aft-stair door. She, assuming the note contained a lonely businessman's phone number, so she dropped it unopened into her purse. Cooper leaned toward her and whispered, "Miss, you'd better look at this note. I have a bomb." The note mentioned the bomb and directed her to sit in the seat beside Cooper. The stunned stewardess did as she was told, then quietly asked to see the bomb. Cooper opened his briefcase long enough for her to see 8 red cylinders attached to wires coated with red insulation and a large cylindrical battery. After closing the briefcase, he stated his demands: $200,000, which is in today's money around $1.2 million, 4 parachutes, 2 primary and 2 reserve, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle to refuel the aircraft upon arrival. Stewardess transferred Cooper's instructions to the pilots in the cockpit. When she returned, Cooper was wearing dark sunglasses. The captain contacted Seattle-Tacoma Airport, which informed local and federal authorities. The 35 other passengers were told that their arrival in Seattle would be delayed because of a minor mechanical difficulty. Northwest Orient's president authorized payment on the ransom and ordered all employees to cooperate fully with the hijackers' demand. The aircraft circled for approximately 2 hours to allow Seattle police and the FBI sufficient time to assemble Cooper's parachutes and ransom money and to mobilize emergency personnel. Flight attendants described him as a calm, polite, and well-spoken, not at all consistent with the stereotypes. He wasn't nervous, but seems rather nice. He was never cruel or nasty, but was thoughtful and calm all the time. He ordered a second bourbon and soda, paid his drink tab, and offered to request meals for the flight crew during the stop in Seattle. FBI agents assembled the ransom money from several Seattle area banks, 10,000 unmarked $20 bills, most with serial numbers beginning with the letter L, indicating insurance by the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, and made a microfilm photograph of each of them. Cooper rejected offered military parachutes, instead demanding civilian parachutes with manual-operated ripcords. Seattle police obtained them from a local skydiving school. At 5:24 p.m., Cooper was informed that his demand had been met, and more than an hour after sunset, the aircraft landed at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. Cooper instructed the captain to park the jet to an isolated, brightly lit section of the airport and close all window shades in the cabin. Northwest Orient Seattle operation manager approached the aircraft and delivered the cash-filled backpack and the parachutes. Once the delivery was completed, Cooper allowed all passengers to leave the plane. During refueling, Cooper outlined his flight plan to the cockpit crew. A southeast course towards Mexico City at the minimum airspeed possible without stalling the aircraft at the maximum 10,000-foot altitude. He further specified that the landing gear remained deployed in the landing position, the wing flaps be lowered 15 degrees, and the cabin remain unpressurized. First officer informed Cooper that the aircraft's range was limited to approximately 1,000 miles under the specified flight configuration, which means that a second refueling would be necessary before entering Mexico. Cooper and the crew discussed options and agreed on Reno, Nevada as the refueling stop. Cooper further directed that the aircraft take off with the rear exit door open and its staircase extended. At approximately 7:40 p.m., the Boeing 727 took off with only Cooper, the captain, flight attendant, first officer, and the flight engineer on board. After takeoff, Cooper instructed all members on board to go in the cockpit and remain there with the door closed. At approximately 8 p.m., a warning light flashed in the cockpit, indicating that the aft air stores equipment had been activated. The crew offered assistance by the aircraft intercom system, which Cooper refused. This was the last communication the crew had with him. They soon noticed a subjective change of air pressure, indicating that the aft door was open. 2 hours later, the 727 was landed with the aft air stairs still deployed at Reno Airport. FBI agents, state troopers, sheriff's deputies, and Reno police surrounded the jet, as it had not yet been determined with certainty that Cooper was no longer aboard. But an armored search quickly confirmed his absence. Cooper had disappeared into the night, and his ultimate fate remains a mystery to this day. The FBI launched what would become one of the longest and most exhaustive investigations in its history. Initially, the agency believed that Cooper knew the plane and the area, and it was speculated that he served in the military, possible as a paratrooper. Later, however, it was decided that he was not an experienced skydiver because the jump was too dangerous, and he failed to notice that his reserve parachute was shot for use in training. The agency reported that it looked at some 800 suspects in the first 5 years, with almost all being eliminated. Some were ruled out on the basis of DNA that was eventually recovered from the thigh Cooper took off before jumping. One prime suspect was Richard Floyd McCoy, who was arrested for a similar crime several months later. However, he was eliminated as a suspect, partially because he did not match the description provided by 2 flight attendants. Many speculated that Cooper, who was outfitted in a business suit, trench coat and loafers, did not survive. At that altitude, the winds were more than 200 miles per hour, and the parachute he used could not be steered. In addition, he would have landed in a rough, heavily wooden area. After years of dead-end leads, investigators received a break 9 years later in 1980, when a boy found a rotting package containing $5,800. It was buried along the Columbia River north of Portland and some 20 miles from Ariel. The serial numbers of the money, all of which were $20 bills, matched those of the ransom. However, following an extensive search, nothing further was discovered. In spite of the fact that FBI continued to receive tips, in 2016 the agency officially closed the investigation, stating that the resources could best be used for other cases. The unsolved mystery fascinated the country, and D.B. Cooper became something of a folk hero, inspiring numerous songs, books, and movies. That was our today's case. See you next time. Bye bye.